Indiana Republican Representative Victoria Spartz is facing an ethics panel probe following multiple complaints from staff that she is abusive and full of rage.
People are truly afraid. I just want to make sure if you're not aware that you are. And this is a big problem when people are afraid.
Now, you may have heard of Victoria Spartz. She is a Ukrainian congresswoman who seemingly does not mind the Russian invasion into Ukraine, as she is against sending aid to Ukraine. She's also threatened to resign from Congress over the national debt. She wanted an economic shutdown over the U.S.-Mexico border, and she called Joe Biden a Marxist.
Well, listen, I think we need to have a serious discussion what really Bidenomics is and how it's resembling socialist policies by Karl Marx, where it's not just, Biden administration had failed policy on a lot of fronts, whether it's supply chain, whether we're dealing with energy, but also they've been subsidizing corporations very close to the government and trying to control financial markets. That in essence, control of means of production and financial markets, that's what socialism really is.
I know there is a lot of discussions about, January 6th, and I've been in the chamber January 6th, and I'll tell you something, we call this insurrection. I'll have to tell you, if the people that show up there wanted to do it, they would have succeeded, but they didn't show up for that reason. It was people that were upset because the quality of people came there. They were mad because we are not governing for the people. And that's unfortunately what was very strange to me, that Speaker Pelosi didn't have a security. Speaker Pelosi insisted for us to stay in the chamber, where I personally demanded to leave that chamber. So a lot of things, the other side dropped the ball. And it was very unfortunate for me to see that. So I think this is beyond the subject of this matter, but we need to stop, accusing people that disagree with the government that have been very corrupt and oppressive, to actually come here and, express peacefully their dissatisfaction. And there are always some bad players, and who knows who they are. But we don't call all people insurrectionists. This is just un-American to do it. And I'm sick and tired of the other side constantly doing it, because I knew a lot of people that were there in the crowd, and they're good Americans, patriotic, that love this country.
According to reporting from Politico, several aides, some current and some former, have met with investigators to detail their interactions with the Congresswoman. The complaints were filed prior to last month's primary, and the investigation was delayed until after the primary, which is now. Chief complaints against her are general workplace toxicity, giant pay cuts, sometimes by tens of thousands of dollars, constant complaining about staff performance, cursing at staffers, belittling them, and raging against them. According to her campaign advisor, Spartz is being targeted because she's attempting to hold leaders and influential people in Washington accountable. He says that the stories are exaggerated, and for her part, Spartz says that she is a hardworking woman and it's not easy for staffers to keep up with her pace. And to that point, the office has seen significant staff turnover throughout her 2 terms in Congress. The more recent staff departures were explained as the office is being reorganized and positions are being modified. So here is what the staffers are saying. One read a text that they received from Spartz. She was telling her staff not to speak to reporters. The text said, quote, "If you feel strongly to badmouth me, I am okay with it. But please do not use some made-up speculations that could put someone's life in danger. It's unethical and will not serve you well in the future." One current aide said, quote, "The common thing is for her to call someone up or to their face, cuss them up, use the F word about 1,000,000 times, call them effing children, effing whatever. That's a weekly thing. It's not rare. All of my interactions with her have been filled with complete and total rage." One former aide recalled a phone call from earlier this year when Spartz allegedly said, quote, "I would rather die than not complete a task. Can you give me that same level of commitment?" Another former staffer confirmed hearing her say a similar thing. Of course, Spartz and her team have denied the allegations. And in her recent primary, one of her challengers, Indiana State Representative Chuck Goodrich, said she was the, quote, #1 worst boss in all of Congress. In an attack ad against her, he referred to her quote-unquote manic behavior and said, quote, "She yells and curses, calls them morons and idiots." Based on the interviews with half a dozen staffers, Victoria Spartz avoided firing staff and instead bullied them until they left. Beyond that, there's the question of the misuse of taxpayer-funded resources. Allegedly, she was using legislative resources and time for campaigning. Legislating and campaigning, they're 2 different things. One uses tax dollars and the other does not. At this point, it seems the investigation is still in the fact-finding phase. Spartz was originally planning on leaving Congress this year until she changed her mind and decided to run for her re-election. Overall, though, I'm not sure what would change or come from any of this. Perhaps at one time, these things mattered to both the American people and to legislators, but today it's hard to imagine any of this making any kind of difference. Her workplace toxicity was reported prior to the primary, and she still won. Her district is very red, and she regularly takes very MAGA positions, like calling Joe Biden a socialist, or talking about the US-Mexico border, or taking a very America First stance, even if it means selling out her own home country. She insists that she is the epitome of the American dream, which Republicans still very much believe in. Republicans also love the idea of hard work, and they hate the idea of these snowflake Zoomers and millennials in the workplace who are so demanding, God forbid, that they want to be treated with some modicum of respect. Spartz yelling at her staff, belittling them, and allegedly asking if they're willing to die for a paycheck will probably just earn her more favor with Republican voters. Also, we know that Republicans love a martyr. They love to feel like they're being persecuted and censored. They say that they're being targeted just for standing up for what they believe in. But being persecuted is not the same thing as being unliked. You can believe what you want to believe. It doesn't mean that people have to like what you believe in, and it doesn't mean that they have to like you. It doesn't mean that they have to want to work for you or work with you. But beyond that, as a leader in a workplace, even if that workplace is in the United States Congress, you are liable to being held accountable for your actions by your employees. If there are problems internally, then they should be addressed. Unfortunately, when there is no upward accountability, there's little incentive for someone like Spartz to adjust her leadership style. Why would she when she can just claim to be a target instead? All right, that's it for me. If you got anything out of this, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and check out my podcast, Modern Context. Thank you very much. Bye.